Hello, Dominic here from the Bournemouth Writing Festival, welcoming you to another in our series interviewing local authors. So I'm planning to release a new interview kind of every Monday evening. So if you want the latest interview in your inbox when it gets put out live, then subscribe. There's a button down there somewhere on YouTube where you can click subscribe, and the latest interview will get to you directly. Now, we are interviewing local writers, authors, writing professionals, and to give you a few bits of wisdom, maybe some inspiration, maybe some tidbits of things that might help you to improve and progress your writing. And all of the people that I'm speaking to have a connection to Bournemouth. Now, the person I'm speaking to today, Jackie Lambert, is based in Bournemouth, but you're probably not going to find her in Bournemouth too much because she is a nomad, a traveling, that she goes across the world in her caravan. I'm sure she's going to talk about it in more detail in a minute. But I thought it's fascinating to speak to somebody who travels, who's taken the decision to leave the kind of normal world, if you like, travel around the world and write about it. She has some travel memoir books out at the moment. So welcome, Jackie.
Hello, I'm very pleased to be here and speaking to you, Dominic. It's lovely to be here.
And you are currently in France, that's right?
That's correct. We're just on our way back. We've done a 2 or 3 month tour around the Baltic states. So we've clocked up a few countries. We've been to Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and we're just on our way back through where we've been in Germany, Luxembourg, France and Belgium. So we're just sitting in the Somme at the moment on a sunny but windy day.
Well, it sounds like you're living the dream, as everybody wants to do that. Get off the grid, travel the world and write.
Well, so, exactly.
Tell us a little bit about your motivations, first of all, to kind of leave the rat race, if you like, travel the world with your husband and 4 dogs, but also, more importantly for everybody watching, how you write and how you kind of get inspired to write and what you write about.
My husband and I, we've always loved travel. We're an adventurous pair. We love horse riding, windsurfing, which is one of the reasons we based ourselves in Bournemouth, because it's an absolute mecca for windsurfing. But we also love to ski. Obviously, with the dogs, we have 4 little dogs who travel with us, and we regularly, obviously, have to walk them. So that's really how it came about. We've always loved travel. And it was a long-held dream to quit the rat race, not something that I ever thought would feasibly happen. But as often happens or occurs, the opportunity came along in a very disguised fashion, in that we were both made redundant at work at the same time. We were 50 years old and began thinking, what on earth are we going to do next? I've never not worked, never not had an income. We haven't won the lottery. We haven't had a bequest from a wealthy unknown aunt. But we went out one day just to have a look at a caravan because of the windsurfing. Really, a motorhome is always the dream with the surfboards on the roof, but basically all our surfboards wouldn't fit in a motorhome. So we decided to keep, we had a little panel van, Big Blue, who's been a very useful little addition to the family as our sort of basic toy box. We bought Big Blue and used that to tow the caravan, so we kept all our bits and pieces in there. And after we sort of went out just to have a look at the caravan, by the end of the day we'd signed on the dotted line. Went home to celebrate and just had the brilliant idea that if we rented out the house and sold most of our possessions, we could actually manage without working if we toured full time with the dogs. And by the time we sobered up, we decided that was an absolutely brilliant idea. So that's what we did. In terms of the writing is something I've always done. You know, I've always tried to find an outlet. I've written for newsletters, magazines, all sorts of things, but never really sort of made the leap into publishing books. In the past, it was always very much more difficult. But I acquitted my need and desire to write by starting a blog. Friends of mine wanted me to start a blog, not just to tell the tales of our travels, but also I think quite a lot of people, as you say, we're living the dream, we're living many people's dreams, and people are generally quite curious to know how on earth we did it without the lottery win and the bequest from a long lost aunt. So I set up my blog really to tell the story of it. And the true story as well. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, sometimes there are some, big downsides. We've been stuck in mud. We've had all sorts of bits and bobs break in the middle of nowhere in Romania and things like that. So it isn't all sugar coated. But I wanted to tell the true story, but also to really make it clear to people that it is something that is achievable. It's a very inexpensive lifestyle, and it is something that is achievable. So I started the blog. It's called Worldwide Walkies, obviously as a gesture to the fact that we do travel with 4 dogs. And it was from there, really, one of my readers actually sent a message to me via the blog. I have since met her, although I didn't know her at the time. And she said, "You should write a book." She said, "Nobody writes like you." She said, "Even your blog about toilets was a joy to read." So I said, "Oh no, I can't possibly write a book." But then she promised that if I did, she'd buy 6 copies for all her Christmas presents for her friends. So I had the motivation then to do it. But she also introduced me to one of her friends, Sophie, who's written, she's self-published or independently published the Deerhound Rhodri children's books. So she introduced me to the whole shenanigans involved with independently publishing, which cut out the whole sort of querying and sending off pictures to literary agents and publishers and all the rest of it, which I have tried. I could paper my house with the rejection letters. So I learned everything that I could about self-publishing on Amazon or through Kindle in KDP, what I'm trying to think what they call themselves, Kindle Direct Publishing, that's it. I learned everything that I could about that. And Fur Babies in France, my first book was born on the 4th of December 2017, I believe.
Well, that's fascinating, and it's so brilliant that you had this kind of desire before you started traveling to write, and then when you were traveling, you started the blog, and we had a talk at the writing festival this year about how to blog and how to be a successful blogger, I guess it's almost like a diary. And then did your books then kind of came as a result of your stories and your blog, or were they completely separate?
No, they did come very much as a result of the blog. I mean, I did manage it. I think Nicola contacted me in September 2017 to say she'd buy 6 copies for Christmas presents, and I thought, well, hey. So I mean, I did actually pull together everything in a very, very short timeline. I was able to do that because fundamentally the blog was a first draft. So all I had to do then was kind of make that into a manuscript, obviously edit it, and form it into a story. It wasn't ready to go as it was, but the bulk of the writing had been done. So then what I had to do in the ensuing couple of months was learn how to produce covers, get formatting, get all the editing and all the rest of it. So there was a lot to learn and a lot to do in the meantime, but fundamentally the writing was done. But yes, my books are travelogues. They're a travel diary, a true travel diary, based basically on our travels.
So when you're traveling, I imagine, when you're traveling, you're on the road a lot, you're going to see the sights, but because you're going at your own pace, I imagine you have a lot of time in your hands as well. So tell us a little bit about your writing process. Do you kind of jot things down as you go along to remember, or do you, at the end of the day, do you kind of write what you did, or do you just only write when the inspiration comes? How do you go about putting words on paper?
I always have a notebook in my handbag. So I never leave home without it. It's by my bed as well, because often the best ideas do come up at about 4 a.m. I'm sure a lot of creatives appreciate that. So I always jot things down. I also, I mean, I love photographs. So I mean, I will often just photograph things as an aid memoir. And then, you know, in terms of writing, if anything sort of strikes me as just interesting, I mean, I love history, I love interesting, curious facts, and we do tend to travel off the beaten path. So, you know, I often find it very entertaining, really, to discover strange facts about places that we go, or the more unusual places that we go. I mean, for example, this year we had a rather interesting experience up in Estonia. We were parked about 30 meters from the Russian border, but we also tried some local delicacies, which were lamprey, which are the most revolting looking sort of eel-like fish. I can't say I recommend them, but you know, we do try sort of interesting and different experiences. So I write about all kinds of things like that. I mean, I do use, there's quite a useful little app. I mean, it's a means of sharing your travel stories. It's called Polar Steps, which I find is just a very useful kind of first draft kind of travel diary. So I write on that, and a couple of friends follow me on that. But then when I publish on my blog, I mean, I do go into things a little bit in more detail, and obviously I edit. It can take me weeks to write 1,000 words just to weave in a good story, a compelling story, but also some interesting facts and hopefully some humour, you know, to keep people pulled through in the story.
So you travel 24/7 pretty much with your husband, and I imagine you meet lots and lots of different types of people. Do they make it into your blogs and books as well? And do you have to be a little bit careful as to kind of identifying them?
Well, I think so. I think it's an issue that comes up for anyone who writes true stories or memoirs, or even people who use characters that they've met in fiction. Obviously, there are laws that protect people in terms of libel and so on and so forth. So one has to be very careful. I mean, what I would say is one of the major pleasures of traveling is the people that we meet. I mean, it's wonderful going to historic places or seeing beautiful castles or magnificent landscapes, but what really adds the colour is often the people that we meet. And in this lifestyle, I mean, we meet all kinds of people. You know, we've met locals. We were invited into the home of a Romanian gypsy when we were sort of travelling in Romania. You know, we've met all kinds of people, and that really does add colour. I think it's a matter of taking a call on what you're writing. If it's something difficult, or, you know, people prefer not to be identified, I mean, I do always ask. Obviously friends of ours do feature in the books, and I do tend to ask if I am going to use real names, but in some cases I do use sort of made up names, or whatever you call it, synonyms or whatever, for people in order to protect their identity if they prefer not to be identified. So I think it's just a matter of making a call on that.
And how about your husband? Does he write? Does he read your blog and kind of say, well, I'm not sure that happened like that way?
Oh, bless his heart, he does get forced to read my blog, and I do sometimes get him to write. I mean, for example, in my latest book, which was about buying our latest home, as it were, it's a home on wheels. It's a 6-wheel army truck that has a gross weight of 24.5 tons. He had to go and collect that from Rotterdam about 2 days before lockdown happened in Italy, which obviously we didn't know was going to happen at the time. So I made him write down what happened with that, and that has now become part of my story. And then various parts of the build which he was involved with, because we bought just a truck with an empty box on the back and converted it into what you can just about see behind me now, which is our full-time home. So I did force him to write bits of that, but he does read my blogs and he does critique them, and he does proofread my books as well. He's kind of the first line of sort of critique with my writing, and he's very honest but always very, very kind.
I was going to ask you about the beast, because I think a caravan is a bit of an understatement of what you have. It's huge. It's like a tank, and it looks brilliant, and it looks heavy, and it looks like nothing's going to get in your way. I imagine that you get quite a bit of attention on your travels with that.
Oh, we do indeed. I mean, previously we were always that couple with 4 dogs, and we met an awful lot of people because people just love the dogs. But now we're traveling in a vintage army truck. I mean, she is a magnificent beast. Beast by name, beast by nature. I mean, people sometimes ask why we call her the beast, but it's because she's 4.5 meters high, 10 meters long and 2.5 meters wide. She really does have a presence. I mean, we bought her blind off the internet, and I remember that you know, when Mark actually went to pick her up, we'd seen the dimensions on the particulars of the truck, and we kind of knew she was big, but until you stand next to her you don't really realize just how big. I mean, Mark is 6'6" tall, so he's 2 meters tall, so he's quite a tall gentleman, but the beast is twice his height, and she has a big bull nose, you know, so she really is quite a formidable looking vehicle, to be honest. And I mean, people love her. I mean, it's actually really a joyful thing to see the expression on people's faces when we drive along. Obviously we've been living in her full time now for 3 years, so sometimes you kind of forget what vehicle you're in until you see the jaws dropping when you drive through a town or a village. And I mean, we've had her on show, and we have had literally like thousands of people have come in to have a look inside, you know. And what is lovely is that, you know, often people, when they talk to us, they say, oh, I've always wanted to do this, it's been my dream. You know, and I think that we're here to, as a testament, to show that it is something that if you put your mind to it, it is something that is achievable. It is something that you can do. But it is one of the joys of driving around in such an unusual vehicle. I mean, there's rarely a day goes by that someone hasn't come and said hello, had a chat about it. I mean, I've had to learn in several different languages, you know, how to describe the vehicle, and obviously the mileage that she does, the miles per gallon, because they do it differently over here. It's you know, sort of I think it's kilometers per litre or something, or litres per 100 kilometers. So I've had to learn an awful lot of metrics about her. But yes, it is a very joyful thing.
Well, and it's amazing that it's a brave thing for you to leave, you know, the certainty of jobs and money, everything, and just follow your dream and just do it. So, you know, kudos to both of you for taking a step. So I imagine it's quite it's like a perpetuating thing. So the travel leads to blogs, that leads to books, which probably leads you back to keep on traveling. So last question for you, what's next?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, originally when we set out in 2016, it was supposed to be a 3-year trip, but we loved it so much that we just carried on. And then it was really, well, it was 2019 that we moved from the caravan to purchase the beast, because when it became obvious that Brexit was going to happen, that does rather limit our ability to travel in Europe. I mean, part of the reason we're back on our way back to the UK now is that we only have 90 days to spend in the whole of Schengen, which is now 29 European and non-European countries, because some countries that are not members of the EU are also in Schengen. So we don't have the freedom to travel in quite the same way as we do. I think in the future, I mean, it is exhausting traveling full time. I mean, I don't sugarcoat our travels, and you know, while every day is different, every day is stimulating, wonderful. We've camped on beaches, we've just seen, you know, some of the most beautiful things. There are things that I miss about living in a house. You know, I mean, at the moment, if we want to even go and buy a bottle of milk, we have to check on Google Earth to make sure that we can get a 10-meter, 4.5-meter high vehicle anywhere near the shop. So, you know, life can be a little bit interesting. So I think in the future, what we might well do is maybe settle back in Bournemouth, because, as I say, there just isn't a place in the world that I've ever found that I like quite as much as Bournemouth. And the view from Hengistbury Head is one of my favourite in the world. Again, I've never seen anything that parallels that, because you have a full 360 view of, you know, just the most beautiful things, from Christchurch Priory to the Needles on the Isle of Wight. So I think we will perhaps settle and maybe do shorter trips in the future, and just maybe benefit a little from some of the comforts of home.
Whatever you do in the future, I wish you the warmest of wishes, and safety and health. And yeah, we might bump into the beast when you come down to Bournemouth, you know, clogging up the roads in the Christchurch bypass. But and good luck with all of your writing. So Jackie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Dominic. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I shall certainly be coming along to some of the Bournemouth Writing Festival socials when I get back to Bournemouth. And yes, I don't think you'll miss the beast. She's quite distinctive, and if you see her driving around the bypass, you definitely won't miss her. So do give us a wave.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jackie. And to the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us and listening in. Hope to see you next Monday evening when I release another one. So for now, thank you so much and take care. Bye.